Hello everyone, I hope you are doing well. Like always, I will be your host tonight, Mr. Dead Sleep. I have 3 scary stories for you from some talented authors on NoSleep Reddit. Right now, just sit back, lay back, whatever's most comfortable for you, and enjoy. Okay, our first spooky story of the night is titled, "Who is the Man Crying in My Shower?" There's an old Charlie Chaplin quote that reads as follows, "I always like walking in the rain, so no one can see me crying." It's a thought-provoking quote, and it might even get you to ask the question, can someone tell if you are crying when you're in the shower? Well, I can answer that question. Yes, you can definitely tell when someone is shedding a tear in the shower. I found out this fact firsthand when I was awoken by the sound of sobbing emanating from the bathroom. I rolled over in bed, confused at first by what the sound was, and checked the alarm clock on my bedside table. 6:58 it read. I sat up in bed, trying to figure out what could be making this strange crying sound. I knew it was coming from the bathroom, but I also knew that I live alone in my house, which I recently purchased, so I knew that no one else could be in the house with me. Maybe the sound was coming from pipes. No, that didn't quite make sense. It really sounded like someone was crying. As I listened closely to the sound, I could also hear the distinct noise of running water. At this point, I got out of bed and began to walk towards the bathroom, towards the noise. As I crept closer to the bathroom, the sound of crying and running water grew stronger, and now there was no really denying it. There was definitely someone in my shower. I approached the bathroom door, slowly turned the handle to open it, and pushed the door open. I only moved the door just an inch, just enough for me to take a peek as to what was happening inside of my bathroom. From the small crack that I was peering through, I could see my shower, and I could see the glass was all foggy from the heat of the running water. I could also make out the outline of someone that was standing in the stream of steaming water. They were just standing there, not moving, apart from the rise and fall of their shoulders as they let out loud and heavy sobs. At this point, I didn't really know how to approach the situation. Do I just swing open the door and confront whoever may be in there? Or do I go call the police? Or maybe I should call out to them. That's the option that I went with. "Excuse me, sir?" I called out, my voice echoing around the tiled bathroom. "But what are you doing inside my house and inside my shower?" There was no response from within the shower. The figure remained still, apart from their heavy sobs also echoing across the bathroom. Again, I called out to them, this time a bit more aggressively. "You need to hop out of my shower right now," I called out. Again, the figure continued to cry, but they still did not move from their position underneath the stream of hot water. Now I was getting angry. How dare someone just come into my house and use my bathroom facilities? I called out again, the anger in my voice now very obvious. "You need to leave right now, otherwise I'm calling the police," I yelled out to the crying man. Once again, he didn't move a muscle. I know that I probably should have asked if he was okay. After all, he was crying. But in that moment, I just wanted him out of my house. I walked away from the bathroom door and went to the bedroom to find my phone so that I could call the police and report the intrusion. I had just walked away from the bathroom door and was almost back at the bedroom when I heard the sound of a tap squeaking slightly, and then the sound of running water stopped. The crying man had turned off the shower. The other sound that was now missing was the sound of him crying. There was now silence in the house. I walked back down the hallway and back to the bathroom door. It was still slightly open like I'd left it, so I quickly looked inside the room just to see what was happening now. As I looked inside, I was astonished to see that the crying man had disappeared. He was no longer in the bathroom. I spent the next 10 minutes looking around the house, trying to find this man, but he was not in any of the rooms. He was no longer in the house. What was so strange about all this, though, was that I was only gone from the bathroom for about 30 seconds. He didn't have enough time to leave the bathroom and leave the house without me seeing him. Now, I do believe in ghosts and I've heard many stories about the paranormal, but I've never experienced it for myself. This was strange, though, and my mind immediately went to the possibility that this was a ghost that I'd seen in the bathroom. I have previously mentioned that I have only recently moved into this house, only a few months ago, but I should probably mention that the house I moved into is quite old. So as you probably know, old houses and ghosts go hand in hand. The rest of the day continued as normal. There were no other paranormal occurrences. It wasn't until that night, when I just finished using the bathroom to brush my teeth, that I heard the shower turn on again. I had just left the bathroom, maybe only a minute before I heard the sound. I heard the slight squeak of the tap and then the sound of running water. Only a few seconds after I heard the tap turn on, once again heard the unmistakable sound of sobbing. I went back to the bathroom at a quick pace and opened the bathroom door that I had previously shut. Whatever was in the shower must have had it on quite hot because steam began to pour out of the room as soon as I opened the door. I looked across the room toward the shower and once again I could make out a figure standing inside. Their outline was moving slightly up and down as they let out loud wails and sobs. The figure was facing away from the door, so I couldn't see their face. Not that I would have been able to anyway. The glass shower door was too fogged up to see anything other than their outline. I took a step further into the bathroom, unsure as how I would approach the situation, but I knew that I should say something to the figure standing in my shower. I took another step, my heart starting to beat faster and faster the closer I got to the shower door. What if it reacted violently? This is what I was thinking as I quietly approached the glass door. I stopped about a meter away from the door and just stood there for a moment. I knew that this was going to be a defining moment in the events to come. I knew I reacted angrily earlier and maybe that pissed it off. So if I tried a more gentle approach this time, maybe I would have more luck communicating with the figure. I cleared my throat and started by asking it a question. I'm sorry to bother you, but I was just wanting to make sure you were okay. I was just wondering, why are you crying? I asked in a polite voice. As soon as I began to speak, I saw the outline stop, moving up and down. Their shoulders now sit still and the sound of crying stopped. It stood there, motionless for a few seconds before I saw it begin to turn towards me. I felt fear begin to rise within me. It had acknowledged that I was there. It knew I was standing right behind it. The figure in the shower slowly moved its head until it was facing towards me. The rest of its body followed. The figure was now facing entirely towards me. I couldn't see any detail of the figure through the fogged up glass, but I knew that it was staring straight at me. I didn't know what to do, so I just stood there, staring back at it. I saw movement from within the shower. It was now lifting up its arm, its index finger pointing outwards, like it was pointing straight at me. It moved its finger closer towards me until the finger was resting on the foggy glass door that divided me and the figure. It began to write on the door. Its finger slowly formed letters in the steam and it slowly spelt out a word. The word was backwards from where I was standing, but I could still make it out. It read, "Anniversary." I didn't know what this could mean, so I asked it. "What is this the anniversary of?" I asked out loud. The outstretched finger then began to write again. Next to the first word, it slowly wrote out more letters, this time spelling out, "Wife's death." My worry grew deeper at this point, but so did my empathy. This figure was obviously crying because his wife died, but it still didn't make sense as to why it was in the house and in my shower. I guessed that she probably died in this house. After processing the previous answer for a second, I asked it another question. "Did your wife die in this house?" I asked it, even though I was pretty sure of the answer. The finger began to write once more, and it wrote the word yes. I wasn't surprised by this answer, and I was about to ask it another question when it began to write again. Long before you were the words that it wrote on the steam-covered glass. I stood there for a moment, thinking of what to ask next, and so I decided to find out more about the wife's death. How did your wife die? I asked out loud, fearful of what the answer may be. The figure sat motionless for a short while, its outstretched finger just sitting there, motionless. Then it began to write something else into the glass. Drowned. As the word appeared in front of me, I felt a chill run down my spine. It was beginning to make more sense as to why this thing was standing in my shower. The finger began to move again. This time it wrote a question for me. Do you have a wife? It wrote. No, I don't, I answered. The finger then wrote another word, just a single word this time. It wrote, shame. Then before I could even process what it had written, it wrote one more thing into the glass door. Turn around. I read it and immediately knew that I didn't want to turn around, but I didn't want to anger this thing, so I did as it asked. I turned my back towards the shower, waiting for whatever it was going to do next. My heartbeat was racing as the dread of whatever it may do set in. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds. 30 long, agonizing seconds, but then I heard the sound of silence. The water had been turned off, and there was no more sound. I stood facing away from the shower for a little while longer, and still nothing was happening. I decided it was time to turn back around and face the shower again. I slowly turned my body and faced the shower door. As I turned back, there was one more sentence written to the fog. It read, I killed her. My heart sank as I read those words. Whoever I'd just been communicating with was a killer. Of his own wife, no less. I didn't know what to do. There wasn't much I could do, except hope that I didn't hear or see from the crying man in the shower again. This is exactly what happened for the next couple of days. There was a peace within the bathroom. No sounds of sobbing or running water came from that room again. I thought that maybe he was going to leave me alone now. I thought, or rather I hoped, that that was the case. How wrong I was, though. It was only 4 days later before the next incident occurred. I had been at work all day and was driving back home. It was just before I turned into my street when I could see the unmistakable blue and red flashing of the police. When I turned into my street, I saw them, the 6 police cars all parked out in front of my home. I slowed down my car and slowly approached my house. I parked a few meters away from my home, got out, and jogged over to the nearest police officer. What is going on here? I asked the officer. I'm the homeowner and would like to know what is happening. I am sorry to inform you of the situation, but we have caught a killer on your property, the officer responded. One of your neighbors reported a sighting of a wanted man. Paul Scorp was a wanted man. He was responsible for his wife's death, drowned her right in this house, in your house, killed her right in your shower. The officer must have seen the look of confusion and horror on my face because he then continued to speak. I'm surprised you didn't know about it. I'm sure it would have been mentioned before you purchased this house. It was the first I had ever heard of it. The real estate agent had never mentioned anything of the sort to me. Well, that's the part that's most disturbing. There is evidence that he may have been living inside your house for a few months. There was a small area in the bathroom that he could crawl in and out of. He had been living there for a while, for what it looks like. Quite a while. The realization hit me. The crying man in the shower was not a ghost. I had been speaking to a real man, a real killer. It was too much for me. I didn't know what to do. I only let out a couple of words. So the man in the shower was real? I managed to say. A man in the shower? The officer asked me. Was he crying? I looked at him for a moment before answering his question. Yes, he was, but how did you know that? I asked. Well, that is strange, the policeman responded. Paul just claimed that he was innocent, that it wasn't him that killed his wife. He said it was the crying man in the shower that did it. Okay, let's move into our second story of the night. This one is titled, I Found an Old Childhood Photo. There's something terribly wrong with it. I found it while cleaning out the closet. An old photo, creased at the corners. It depicted a little boy sitting on a chair in the middle of a wallpapered kitchen. I flipped it over and checked the date on the back. November 14th, 1996. So me, when I was 4. Except, the kid didn't look quite like me. The photo was grainy, so it was hard to tell for sure. But the eyes were a little too wide set. The smile was too toothy. So, a friend? But it was definitely my mom's kitchen. Floral wallpaper with pink rosettes, the old oak table, and the kid so closely resembled me. Wouldn't I remember having a friend that looked like he could be my twin brother? And why isn't it with the other family photos? I'd found it in my mom's closet. She had several photo books, all populated with childhood photos, documenting the most insignificant events, from baking cookies to baseball games. So why wasn't this photo with the rest? Why was it hiding on the top shelf of my mom's closet, tucked under a hat box? I walked out to the family room, grabbed the photo album labeled 1995 to 1998, paged through it until I got to a good, clear photo of myself at 4. I then pulled the photo from my pocket and compared the two. It wasn't a great comparison. My head was tilted to the side, and his was straight. I was wearing a hat. He wasn't. Still, the difference was unmistakable. His grin was wider, toothier, his skin was paler, his eyes were wider set. Yet the differences were subtle. To anyone but me, they'd probably look like the same person. What are you doing? I turned to see my mom standing in the doorway carrying a large box. I hesitated, wondering if I should bring it up to her. She had enough on her mind, with my stepdad passing away and the big move. I found this photo. Who is that? She set down the box and walked over. That's you, when you were 4 or 5, she smiled. Aw, how sweet. Look at you. But it doesn't... I hesitated again, knowing I would sound crazy. It doesn't, look exactly like me, does it? Yeah, you were a goofy-looking kid, she laughed. You got a lot better looking as you aged. No, I mean, that photo doesn't look like I did when I was a kid. Look, see? I held up the photo of me in the Red Sox cap side by side with the photo of the boy in the kitchen. I think they look identical, she said. No, they don't. Maybe it's the hat. Hey, can you help me in the attic? There's a lot of stuff up there. Sure, I'll be there in a second. She smiled at me and turned away. I listened to her bare footsteps recede on the carpet. Then I snapped the photo album shut and put it back. I tucked the photo in my pocket. Then I walked back into my mom's room and opened the closet. There were more. When I took down the hat box to search under it, the top came off, revealing an entire trove of photographs. I picked up a few of them, and my heart dropped. A kid hunched over a birthday cake with 4 candles, smiling. Me, except not me. The same toothy grin, the same wide-set blue eyes. A kid standing in the front yard, pointing to a frog. My front yard. Again, not me. And then there was a photo that made my heart stop. A photo of my bed. I still remembered those covers, with the sports cars on them, the pillow with the wheels on it, the car lamp. But there, sitting on the bed, not one little boy. 2. Adam? My mom's voice came from above. I stared at the photo, frozen. Me, sitting next to a little boy that looked almost exactly like me. A twin? A brother? I had no memory of this kid. All my life I'd believed I was an only child. Adam! The stack of photos was a few inches thick. There was no way I could get through them all. I slipped several in my pocket, replaced the hat box, and then headed down the hall. "Coming, Mom." I started up the ladder, and my phone began to ring. The theme to Legend of Zelda played its tune. I stopped 2 stairs up and slipped my phone out of my pocket. Caller ID. Allie, my wife. "Yeah? Can you get me a drink too?" Sure," I said. "What do you want me to pick up on the way back? The usual whiskey?" "On the way back?" "Yeah, on the way back from my mom's. I'll be here another hour or two, but..." "You're at your mom's?" she asked, her voice suddenly soft, confused. "Yeah, why?" "I don't understand. I just let you inside the house," she said. "You're down in the kitchen, making us drinks, aren't you?" Okay, that ended pretty creepy. That was a good one. Let's move on to our third and last story of the night. This one is titled Gut Feeling. I was snuggled up in my blankets, eating chocolate while watching Lord of the Rings. My electric blanket set on the lowest setting just to get me toasty and warm, away from the lovely winter cold. The wind was bashing against the old walls and windows, accompanied by the gentle pitter-patter of rain on the roof. It was nearing 9 p.m. when I finished the second Lord of the Rings movie, and I realized that I'd run out of chocolate. Lying there, staring at my blank laptop screen, I contemplated my gluttony. I decided on walking to the shop just down the street so I could get more chocolate to eat with the next movie. I like eating while watching movies. I put on a warmer jumper and slid into my boots and headed out the door. It was dark, wet, foggy, and dead quiet. I was looking down at my phone and trying to ignore the creepy atmosphere. While I was walking down the street, I heard a loud scream off in the distance that made me jump. It wasn't like a human scream, but it was also not like any animal I know around this rural town. The closest thing I thought it could be was either a boar or a fox. The next thing that came to my head was, I should listen to Frodo and stay off the road. Not that I did. I looked around. I squinted my eyes to try and see through the dark fog. The fog looked like clouds, thick and wavy, creeping along the road like a blanket, surrounded by pitch black, the only light being the faint glow of the street lights. I had the anxious thoughts telling me to go back. The night feels wrong, heavy, but I pushed my probably smarter thoughts back deeper in my head. I was nearing the shop when I heard the scream again. It was a lot louder this time, and definitely a lot closer. I definitely don't know what animal made that sound. I quickly light jogged into the shop, pretending not to be completely freaked out over an animal sound and some bad weather. I was greeted by the cashier upon entering, and he kindly chuckled at my awkward entrance while nodding his head. "Cold one tonight, isn't it?" he laughed, and his old leathery skin stretched painfully around his face. "Yes, just a tad," I responded with a giggle. I quickly went to the chocolate aisle and decided on mint slices, cherry ripes, and Turkish delights. On my way out, I had another small talk with the old cashier, and then I asked if he heard the screaming just before. His face just dropped. He now looked annoyed, and in the most serious voice he said, "Get yourself home now." So obviously I tripped over on my smooth dash out of the store, but after that I was gone. Listen, I don't care if he was joking or if he's bipolar or something, but I was going to do what he said, okay? So I'm walking back very fast towards my house, hoodie over my head for just that little bit more protection, the whole time just waiting to hear the scream. I was breathing super heavy at this point, and the fog seemed like it grew 10 times more intense compared to before. It's like the curtain of thick fog, barely letting the street light shine through. The closer I got to my house, the more I noticed darkness appearing in my peripheral. At first, I thought it was a shadow of someone behind me, but when I turned around, I realized that the street lights were turning off, one by one, darkness quickly coming towards me. I turned and I ran, faster than I ever have or probably will again. After running some distance, I had to take a break. The cold air was smashing my poor smoker lungs. A huge stitch stretched across my whole stomach. Panting, I looked around behind me. The light stopped turning off, but it was still dead silent and the air felt sick. I just started to walk again when I heard the scream. Remember when you're a kid and you hear scary sounds and you're paralyzed with fear? You can't cry, you can't call out for your parents, and sometimes it's like you can't even breathe? Well, that was me. The very second I heard this scream come from the trees directly to my left, I bolted. As I sprinted up my gravel driveway, I struggled to get my key out for the front door. In the duration of my struggle with getting the door open, I did glance back to see if it was chasing me. There, in the middle of the road, 2 blocks down, was this huge animal. It was like a wolf, mixed with a pig, mixed with a gargoyle, and it was huge. It was all black and hairy. Under the streetlights, it looked like the beast was covered in some sort of black oil. Just as it got in a leaping position, I closed, locked, and secured every door, window, and entrance into the house. I went to the kitchen and grabbed a big knife. Thought about calling the cops, but didn't know what to say, and plus, what about my weed? So I just sat in my room, staring at my window and door all night. No movie or chocolate. When I woke up, I looked out the windows. It seemed like a normal day. It was actually better than normal. It was sunny and warm, and for once in a long while I saw kids riding bikes down the street. I was still tired from my amazing experience the night prior, so I thought I'd take a longer sleep. Just as I got in bed and did that cozy sigh, I heard it. Raspy breathing, almost forming a laugh, but verging on a cough coming from under my bed. My eyes opened wide and I lied there stiff like a log. I managed to pull my head under the blanket, but that's when the breathing stopped, and a low, evil, deep, and sickly voice said, "You know I'm here." And before I knew it, I was dragged out from my bed and being pulled under it. All I could feel was the sharp nails or claws tearing open my fragile skin. The numbness that came shortly after was just the burst of adrenaline needed. I suddenly went into fight or flight and decided to fight this thing. I just kept kicking the creature over and over again as fast as I could and with as much power as I could muster. Eventually, the creature freed me, and I scrambled for the door, but when I looked back, nothing. It's been a week since then, and I'm going crazy from waiting for this monster to kill me. I don't know what it is or why it's after me, but this thing is smart. Real smart. I think it's learning, gaining more power, and it might even feed off my fear or something, but all I know is I'm scared. I'm writing this so you all know that this creature exists. I haven't heard of it, but this monster sent me a letter yesterday. It was the intestines of something, human or animal. I don't know, but it came with a note, written in blood, barely intelligible. It read, "What does your gut tell you?" And right now, my gut is telling me I probably won't survive the night. Okay, that was our last spooky story of the night. I hope you enjoyed yourselves like I did. If you haven't already, I hope you give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more weekly spooky stories. Time for me to go, but I'll be back before you know it. I'm Mr. Dead Sleep. Good night.